All right. Thank you, Madam Chairman. So I want to start just by, we've heard a lot already about workforce shortages, and I know that's not a new conversation. This is going to be directed to Captain Ambrose. We haven't heard as much, or at least not since I've been paying attention, about the role of the vaccine mandates in the pilot shortage. And look, I'm not asking this question to point fingers or to attack anybody, but I'd like just an honest explanation and conversation here about what the vaccine mandates did to our pilot workforce. And obviously, Captain Ambrose, you're the right person to answer this question, but could you walk me through what effect that had, whether we're still feeling it today?
Well, thank you, Senator. And I know it's more about the vaccine. Maybe at the end, if I have time, I could address some of the fallacies with the pilot shortage thing going on out here. But the facts are, when the vaccine happened, every airline handled it differently. We know some airlines actually did the mandate. Other airlines, I collaborated with my airline at the time to make sure that pilots and other employees could have a reasonable accommodation. So we successfully came to an agreement where we incentivized the vaccine, but no employees got terminated. So there was zero effect at our carrier for that. On a industry as a whole, most people did either get vaccinated, so it was a very small percentage. So I would say that the vaccination process itself and where we are today has very little effect at where we are. I think the fact that honestly, the fact that many pilots and other workers got out of the business during COVID, early retired, whether they were vaccinated or not, early retired. The fact that airlines bumped a lot of pilots down to lower paying equipment, smaller equipment, because didn't know what was going to happen and how fast the recovery was going to be. And then this massive training backlog we're dealing with right now, which is working its way through, but that massive training backlog is coming back the other direction, is really what's the root of why we're not flying pre-pandemic levels. But to be clear, the airlines have more pilots today than they had pre-pandemic, but they're not operating as many flights. That is because of this massive training backlog, which is working through. There is a light at the end of the tunnel. The flight schoolers are full. We have more pilots. We have more airline transport pilot certificates issued last year than in history, more than are required. So airlines make economic decisions as to why they don't serve smaller communities. There are a lot of small airplanes parked. Those airplanes aren't coming back even if there was a surplus.
Can I just follow up on the training requirement real quick? And then I want to ask a question to Mr. Sparrow just about what we've done with our maintenance staff and outsourcing. But so really quickly, just because I have limited time, I've heard a lot, and I've in fact had private conversations with airline executives who've encouraged us to relax the 1,500-hour standard in flight. And I recognize you don't like that idea, Mr. Ambrose, and that's fine. I don't know, and that's part of the reason I'm asking. But maybe to try to square the circle a little bit, one of the arguments I've also heard, not just about the number of hours, but is that there's too much rote flying and not enough preparation for sort of crisis situations in some of the flight training that we do. Do you think that's right? So let's say, for example, you didn't want to relax the 1,500-hour rule. Would you be open to sort of changing the way that those 1,500 hours are composed, such as there was a little bit more focus on crisis response? Do you think that's a fair problem?
So the 1,500-hour rule is a bit of a misnomer. That's the name. But there are other mechanisms. If you are out of the military, it's 750 hours. If you are a 4-year accredited school where you had advanced academics, it's 1,000 hours. If it's a 2-year program, it's 1,250 hours. The process is already there. There doesn't need to be a change. There's an air carrier rulemaking, the ACT ARC, at the FAA that can study any of those proposals. So it's a solution in search of a problem because it already is there. The mechanism, if someone's got a great idea, can go to the rulemaking committee and say, hey, here's an alternative means. But to be clear, there's a fallacy that people are just flying around in circles, buying time to build their 1,500 hours. That's not the case. These people are teaching other pilots. They're out there doing commercial work, getting paid to do this. very few pilots have the financial resources to just go buy 1,500 hours worth of flight time.
Sure.
So these people are contributing to the next generation of pilots right behind them.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that, Mr. Ambrose. And Mr. Sparrow, given that I'm light on time, I'm going to submit this question to the record. But let me explain why I'm going to ask this question. So I really worry when you see the trends in offshoring and outsourcing a lot of our aircraft maintenance. One, I worry about it from the perspective of workers. Obviously, that means that there are American workers who are not doing those jobs, not earning those wages, and so forth. But I think given what's going on in the world, we should start to think about this maybe as a national security problem. If you think about what we're doing, we could very well be training in East Asia a generation of commercial aviation maintenance people who could be doing military aviation maintenance 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, in a way that's very, very oppositional to our national security interests. So I'll submit that question to the record, but that's why I'm asking it, is I worry about the effect on workers, also worry about the effect on our national security. Thank you, and I yield.
Thank you, Senator Vance. And just so you know, part of the aviation safety bill is for the United States to be the leads in those safety standards and then go to ICAO and get those as the international safety standards. That's the best way for us to lead, and that way we would know what those standards had to be adhered to around the globe. We don't want a lesser standard, but we need the FAA to have the leadership to go do that and to be a very loud voice on that.